It's October 8th, 2022. So many things are running through my head at the moment. I went for a ride to a place that I used to go to in Port Washington. Ran into somebody that I used to know or see a lot when I went there. It was odd because I got to see his full face. Because since I met him, he had a mask on and I only saw his eyes. And then today, for the first time, like his whole face was exposed. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that was very interesting. So, anyhow, so as I'm driving there, though, I'm trying to clear my visual reference and fine tune the skills of observance. Um, I tried reading the good book or one of the books um, in words that speak to my heart, and things that just make sense. There's a word the humans have used. I've heard it on radio and television called nepotist. Did not know what that meant. Still not. Then I had to ask Alexa what nepotism means, and I was like, right, okay. In good lord and landlord, I understand. And then I'm like, still don't want to get in the fight between the drug lord and the warlord, because whoever they are, they sound really frightening. And as long as I feel like God's on my side, I'm in good standing with whatever keeps national security safe, I would think. So, with that in mind, I'm listening to the radio. They have now, this is the same radio that if there's a car vehicle or if they have some kind of transmitter, anyone from any country that makes landfall is able to tune into this level of intellectual education, even though it seems on the surface to be a bunch of hooey. It is very enlightening if you're trying to follow or track a storm or a potential storm or some kind of hazard in your life or possibly in the upcoming generation. Um, so I heard a Caribbean and South American viewpoint of whatever. They threw out a really angry reference to something Mormon, and I'm like, never heard. Again, I'm just now running into them and meeting them for the first time with no prejudice whatsoever in New York. So that's something brand new. Um, they look very wholesome, Midwest, and clean cut, which is a nice change of operation for what's currently walking around my life frame. Um, my kids being excluded, of course, because, of course, I feel that they would be as nicely dressed if they weren't with whatever plagues me from before I can remember. Um, so I'm listening to this Caribbean voice calling for a nation to stand together, and I'm like, whew. I was like, that is a lot to digest in some alternate fashion based on what is possibly mustering and roll calling in what is my son experiencing if I put myself in his shoes at 22 for just a moment. Um, in just I'm fathoming, and in fathoms below, I'm like, All right, so then I'm thinking to myself, I hear on the radio as I pull up to the Starbucks, um, they said something about National Guard is having trouble recruiting. And I'm like, well, if they weren't so absentee in my life frame, maybe I would be more aware of what like hurdles they might be facing or what happened to them, since it's been like a ghosted event between me and anything that even looks slightly relatable to high standards and intellectual in the field. So I'm like, right. So they said that if National Guard is unable to keep its numbers, it will lose its ability to deploy. I'm like, if it's a nepotism way of taking care and looking over my sons, and it's my portion of Eagle's nest, I'm frightened as a three-headed mom of like a Cerberus level looking over the hellhound area of Western Troy and now called Bayside Station, um, with a code of 11361, which again, police station frightens me of the 113 because I'm in the 111. I'm in Roman numeral 3, just so we are clear on, is that a Roman numeral or is that 3 digits of the number 1? Like, inquiring minds are very curious at this point. Hard to cipher um, in an alphabet, in an alphanumerices type of way. So anyhow, so I don't really know the full scope and severity of that acknowledgement on the radio. It was not on the Caribbean radio. It was on a different, I was just scanning the dial like I always do. I then heard, I know some people say listening to the radio is like listening to the devil speak. And I'm like, yeah. And if you are a mother who loves your son more than you even love your own self, it is very interesting what the devil will put on the record of what they were doing at the same time I was being held in a series of rooms elsewhere on the same island. This one gentleman that did not live very long, not in a nepotism practicing category, but in an alternate scenario that's in the field, from where I am at the moment, where my head rests and I wake up every morning. He says that they used to have something called Word Up magazine. Now, in organized criminal rings, in city management, and of course, national security always being on the top of my priority list for my sons and myself. I am just so curious about this Word Up magazine and how they trended themselves some pageantry or some agreement I never took part in. I wasn't even offered the same level of unity with my own brethren. So I thought that was interesting. Um, so that happened. Then I'm listening and I am like, oh my goodness. Here on the television is Mayor Adams, from which I don't know. And they are talking policy, like federal policy, no less, on this sorcery in a If somebody pays now for this TV service, which is Verizon, and it seems to be open unless people are following like specific nepotistic rules and regulations and codes at Masonic whatever and symbolic relations, um, now anybody who travels here by air, foot, boat has access to these announcements, almost like it used to be public service announcements, but now they have telephone to call their great beyonds, their armies in the great beyond. Their freedom to speak is getting to be very hazardous in the modern world of New York. I'm very frightfully concerned at family, country, and oh God. And then there's a Lord somewhere, and the good Lord, I don't know how to report in so I don't get myself hurt and I don't hurt others. However, there's a couple of things you should know that's going on in the local area. Might affect, because I don't know how they keep a tight package or a wrap on anything. So it's interesting. They were talking policy. There's a New York City councilman talking policy on the Channel 7. And he was saying, I think it was Channel 7, maybe it was Channel 2. And he was saying that it's the federal policy that they don't pay for something unless, and I'm like, whoa. So now on public service announcement, you are teaching the organized criminals how to organize better or how to buck the system. Because in this one very real scenario that I'm also very frightened about, there's buses of migrants coming up from, they say, Texas, in a one lone star state. I'm 2 stars operating out of New York. There's a testimony of 8 and 3 somewhere. Seems really important. There's a Big 10 I heard about once upon a time in like a little girl's dream that there exists a network of brothers that really are as good as they want everybody else to believe that they are, in like a superhero moment, like they can all pull it together and rally together, and like someone knows the drug and the warlord's phone number if their little sister is getting pushed up upon. Whatever happened to that kind of unity? So here we are. So they're talking policy on the television. I thought that was frowned upon, but there's like a whole lot of brokenness in the very real system of, I just discovered a book that is Unity Amongst the Americas. It also had a very interesting linguistical prowess preference. I also mentioned to the representative from wherever that has a very interesting numerological whatever, and the whatever of semblance. And I'm like, it is really interesting how this is all. So now this Texas person is pushing, and he's got a drug company name. I'm just saying, I heard that on baby formulas. I mean, I didn't, a roundabout way of letting me know things. In what form of sorcery and witches and wizards are this? Like, there's good people behind some stuff, and I'll figure it out. Just give me a little bit. Might sound a little sassy, but again, what am I to do? I'm just an American nobody. Except if you look up anniversaries and birth dates and whatever. So here we are, and most people don't have access to that kind of stuff. So watching this, and I'm gonna put it up so this way I have a record of it. It wasn't me. I don't know how this stuff gets put together, but I am definitely sure were talking policy on New York news. I heard on the car radio a Caribbean call out to other multinational countries trying to start a rally of some sort and unity amongst whatever in past historical events that have no relevance or preference whatsoever to the New York crowd. Since if you are in New York, you have no history here. You are all starting over from square one. And there is a certain management that needs to be acknowledged and whatever for everyone's security. Because the things like drug lords, warlords, good lord, and the landlord really do exist, and there are signs in the streets and on the currency that are driving fundamental factors in this New York area of North America. And if the great beyond they came from had problems with their management or any of their four lord system, I can't have that infecting the New York area. That has to be something that gets hung at the door like just whatever. And I don't know how to keep that level of borders and security. And I'm sure there are professionals. I just don't know how they organize themselves, where they organize themselves, and why I was never informed that they even exist if I ever had a problem and how to reach out to them directly. So Mayor Adams is now calling for a state of emergency. Not quite sure what that means. Again, I haven't been given schedules. I haven't been given market maker information. I haven't been given anything before it actually pollutes the airwaves, the sound waves, the calendar, and before it actually goes into effect in planning. So for strategic management, there was opportunity, but I don't know what happened. So this is what they're showing, and this is what he's saying. So he's doing some state of emergency because he learned some FEMA federal policy. It used to be that they never let the children outside of the group know about policy for a specific reason, so they didn't extort and try to overthrow, since it seems like some of the people who left elsewhere are trying the old tricks in the new area, and it seems to be a security concern of mine. And I would assume if my grandfather knew, which I'm not saying he didn't, he would have voiced such concern himself. He was Sons of Italy in New York. I hear there's a Brothers of Italy somewhere. I'm just not quite sure. But I do hear in the New York area someone on the public airwaves broadcast. I'm not even broadcast. Calling out to other countrymen to join them.
And as we just said, declaring a state of emergency as a surge of migrants coming into the city becomes a humanitarian crisis.
More than 17,000 asylum seekers have been bused directly to New York City from
17,000. That looks like they just had a commercial that they put up there showing that 17 and 62, whatever that stands for in Masonics, is a dirty job. And there's some dirty whatever going on in dirty job. There's a lot of unbeknownst to me. However, I don't know how to stay safe, stay upright, stay with breath in my lungs, and to work on what's appropriate and what need be. But when I see glaring things like this, I am of I'm so concerned because it says mayor. The city will spend $1 billion on care for these newcomers. I'm not even in a social welfare program or an employment program where I can pay for myself and my kids. I'm not living at Brady Bunch golden plates and inscription service. I'm living at gas chambers in the streets and trying to make sure that the water that I drink is not polluted enough that I'm having other alternative health issues in biochemistry. I mean, it is just one thing after the next everywhere I look. It really is like holding onto a wiffle ball and not even knowing how to plug up any of the, it was hardball at one time. I really thought the men's team at the men's department was going to get my team right. They were going to get my situation right. They were going to get my marriage right. I was going to have children the right way. I really believed every bit of my person that the men's team was going to get it done because no women's team existed. In New York Giants, the only name on the back of that quarterback jersey was Manning. So it's the men's department. And that is non-negotiable. For one name, one reality, for the man upstairs in New York so I don't get in trouble. There's a Boston Tea Party brother somewhere. And every now and again, there's whatever and whatever. And then there's a grandpa star just so I have a backup to I'm not crazy. There really are Masonic symbols. And I mean, some of you I would expect to know more than others, but here we are. So I don't understand where they come up with $1 billion. Then he's leaning upon federal policy, even though he's not a practicing nepotist. So now, is it my federal dollars from when I contributed because I actually had $38,000 worth of income coming in and I made my very big federal tax payments out of those checks every month? Just curious. I mean, the laughing, it's just ridiculous at this point because it's so dangerously absurd where I've been left in comparison to the others, who at this point, I don't even know if they pay taxes, but here we are. So now I'm just confused as to how the system is bleeding or working and how the organized criminals are learning and exponentially growing their criminal enterprises, and why it's so hard for one brother to help his one sister get to somewhere where she belongs in Special Task Force Marked.
Texas, the mayor warns the city will spend at least $1 billion caring for them all, which will drain the city's resources. Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Kim is live at City Hall with the story. Stefan?
Well, Shirlene and David, the city shelter system is at its breaking point, and we need help from the state and the feds. That is the message from Mayor Adams as he declared a state of emergency and issued an executive order. It would direct all agencies to coordinate construction of migrant-tent cities or humanitarian relief centers. It would also clear some red tape to expedite that process. The shelter system is setting new daily records amid the unyielding arrival of asylum seekers bused from Texas and elsewhere. More than 17,000 asylum seekers have been bused to the city. 5 or 6 buses arrive every day. The mayor expects the city will have to spend $1 billion by the end of the fiscal year. He says this is unsustainable. Of the 61,000 people in shelters, 20,000 are children. 1 out of 5 is an asylum seeker. 5,500 migrant children have been enrolled in city schools. The mayor is appealing to hotels for temporary housing and to religious groups to adopt a shelter and provide assistance, something the city council proposed this week as it objected to the migrant tent city being moved to Randall's Island, citing the same concerns it had with Orchard Beach, inaccessible by mass transit and flood prone. As for the buses of migrants arriving daily, the mayor says the city's compassion is being...
There was never any agreement to take on the job of supporting thousands of asylum seekers. This responsibility was simply handed to us without warning as buses began showing up. There's no playbook, no precedent. But despite all this, our city's response has been nothing short of heroic.
According to him. Because now they're talking policy, federal policy, alerting anyone in this position that was kept out, so national security was at the highest standard to keep gang-related whatever goes on at a minimum, and whatever safe, and whatever participates lawfully, whatever. I mean, like, there's a whole cascade and psychology to the inner workings of a large metropolitan city. It just seems to me like, even though at this point I'm so in a blind that these things I need to know, there just seems like there would be a safer way for me to learn them if this, I mean, like, this is a lot to cover in such a lot of ground that was, it feels lost, that needs to be covered and gained back in some battle that's been going on that I've been kept out of, but seems to affect me in multiple ways. Okay, so the broadcast that I just put up was Channel 7, Eyewitness News in New York. This particular broadcast is CBS New York, Channel 2, and it says Asylum Seekers Crisis. This Channel 2 is where they actually speak federal policy in large broadcast, where I'm like, again, I don't have copies of the schedule or anything to do with the schedule. I just have an MVP VIP field day, whatever, that started before I was even aware, who just so happens to name his first kid in the high school I was in when that particular event happened. And thank you, brother.
Has declared a state of emergency over the growing asylum crisis in the city. The mayor says 5 to 6 buses a day filled with migrants are arriving from the southern border. 17,000 people have arrived since April. Mayor Adams says it's overwhelming the city's shelter system. He wants the state and federal government to help with the cost.
Although our compassion is limitless, our resources are not. The city is going to run out of funding for other priorities.
The only way to open up the spigot of FEMA dollars is for the governor and the president to declare New York City a state of emergency. That's just FEMA's policy.
The mayor's new state.
Oh, and there was FEMA's policy right there by a New York City council person. Which is why I thought, like, who gets hired, who participates? Like, I mean, it's not just open for all, although they've made it that. But there was very specific, like, at one point, FBI looked nepotist. The city management looked nepotist. The bank of Big Daddy Warbucks elsewhere matches that level of nepotism, which the ungrateful children of modern day used to be very happy that there were family members that had Big Daddy Warbucks' phone number and could ask for help, and then they were grateful at once upon a time. But in this modern mess, it feels like not only have they lost the phone number to Big Daddy Warbucks, but they also lost agency, some city offices, and some rules of engagement and protocol for safety purposes of the warlord, drug lord, landlord, and then the children like myself that practice and walk in, oh good Lord.
Of emergency will help fast track the creation of new emergency relief centers. The city currently is moving forward with a temporary shelter on Randall's Island. More than 40 hotels are also being used to house asylum seekers. A man who was stabbed Thursday night at a
Okay, so that was a portion of the news of what's being shipped in. Now, interestingly enough, Second Texas Lone Star that came up is in the category of paper license plates. Just so the Sea of Blue doesn't think that I forgot about them, I just tread very carefully on how I make mention and when I use my voice of power and when I quiet and think of how to point things out and get to the point with short attention spans and short fuses on temper. Oh, and to the point, here we are. CBS News, The Point, but they use Marsha Kramer. So here's this Channel 2 on the paper license plates that they're using. Apparently, some of the city plain clothes, whatever they are, from wherever they are, in however they're participating in, I don't know what's up or down or inside out, upside down, inside out, I don't know. But it operates in other parts of the city. And it seems like they've got paper license plates. I'll let them do the synopsis.
Point tomorrow morning at 11:30 right here on CBS 2. An NYPD crackdown on what they're calling phantom vehicles or cars with fake license plates. Police say many of them end up being linked to crime. CBS 2's Jenna DeAngelis went along for the ride as the city attempts to crack down on a growing problem.
These are the alleged getaway cars from separate shootings in Queens and Brooklyn. Police say this car is connected to robberies in the Bronx. 3 different crimes with one major thing in common: cars with illegal, fake, paper license plates known by the NYPD as phantom cars. We joined NYPD Highway Patrol Officer Stephen Abrams to learn more about this growing problem in the city.
Again, I don't know, am I a layman in this? It gets a little confusing. I've used those words my entire, whatever, in dream sequence. But in real life, I've never really had to use it. I think I had an interview, I had to use it once.
The main concern is the violent crimes being committed in New York City right now. These perpetrators are using these vehicles that are undetectable due to these fraudulent plates.
Phantom cars are tough to trace, but Officer Abrams is trained to track them down.
Look at certain indicators, such as like the shape of the plate, the sequence numbers, the state.
Now, what's interesting is the NYPD officer in uniform in the front seat has a suit behind him that does not look very nepotist in practice to, let's just say, any U.S. president precedent to the 2000 thereafter debauchery of break in the family estate, which is like a global concern along with local and regional, as far as I am concerned, having children in the nest. And then I don't know where these intruders are coming from, and I don't know why NYPD is being instructed to inform them as if they are part of some, I don't know. I mean, again, you have a mayor that's claiming a state of emergency. What outside state, from what state great beyond the shores of the United States territory of America, are they calling upon to send money and reinforcements of bodies that don't match landlord, drug lord, warlord? I'm just curious. calling from like a northwest Turkey area of Troy that has a very separate whatever than West Troy and the Bell and prosperous times, and did not need like a full like invasion scenario at some kind of theater that someone finds very amusing. So here is the officer, and here is the why. Where's my national security on this? Why are these interviews and sharing of intelligence even going on inside the city of New York? What is going on?
State seals.
He gave us a closer look, pointing out this parked car in Queens.
This is a completely bogus license plate, so they're tailoring these information on these plates in order to make it look legitimate.
Must I remind my layman, or my heart of near and dear to my heart from when I was younger, and familial members gathered somewhere, and the children were asked to ring the bell for dinner, and one stood up to ring the bell of whatever was written on the metallurgy for clergy. I am unclear at this time, but it was Lucian Farms, and that was a state within the territory or the region just outside of my local area.
So this car will be towed.
Yes, it will be.
If you get caught with a fraudulent license plate, police say you will get arrested and your car will get taken to an NYPD impound lot like this one.
This is a fraudulent temporary Texas plate. When running this number through our database, it actually comes back to no results found, which means that this unique sequence number was never issued by the state of Texas.
There are legitimate temporary tags out there. NYPD Deputy Inspector Connor Wynn said paper plates became more prevalent in the pandemic, with DMV operations disrupted around the country.
As we started to come out of the pandemic, those paper plates remained on those vehicles. So what was happening was that people were either manipulating the actual document to stretch the expiration date, or they were making a completely new fraudulent document.
He says it's also illegal to obscure license plates in any way.
You can actually see the wiring that's coming from the side of the trunk into the plate mechanism actually there.
That plate mechanism was discovered by Officer Michael Fokianos when he was pulling the driver over for speeding, leading to an arrest.
In a given day, how many of these fraudulent license plates do you usually come across?
Approximately 5 to 10.
Wow.
But there's only one of me, and a lot of people out here making, fake plates.
Obstructed and temporary plates, legal or illegal, can defraud speed cameras and tolls. Police say oftentimes they find these cars are also uninsured and unregistered, which can lead to safety issues on the roads.
And we're ultimately paying the price.
I, as a concerned, let's just say nobody special that belongs to somebody very special somewhere in my dream sequence, am concerned about this. Looks very drug cartel-ish. I don't know if the warlord and the drug lord, the one-headed bird, two-headed bird, if it's a gold or if it's a black bird. Not sure if it's a three-headed dog issue. Again, it gets really confusing with who does one call out to when the levels of professionalism are just like, I see professionalism and courtesy being extended, but it looks like the national security standards are being compromised, and that puts my life in danger and that of my children, and by existential whatever others that are in a family tree business. I've been a tree trimmer once. My son Anthony, the neighbor, took down a tree just because I didn't know what Seder or cedar meant. I was like, how do you pronounce it? I'm in real estate, but I don't know. It does make a difference. But then I met I was outside of one of the places that I was staying, and they took this gigantic historic tree down, and my son cried like he lost a family member. I shocked, and there was a whole deck full of witnesses on a green deck full of witnesses about this. I think it was either 2 or 3 years old, like crying as though his favorite family member just passed away by this one tree being cut into. I had to actually physically remove him from the premise and try to bring him somewhere else because he was so moved in pain by this tree coming down.
For other people's illegal activities, which needs to be nipped in the butt.
And Officer Abrams has made it his mission to do just that. Jenna DeAngelis, CBS 2 News.
Another step forward for outdoor
So that's what's on the news in New York. It's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way universe, galaxy is broken. It's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.